One of the things that Sarah mentioned is that there's a large concern in denominations across faiths for the impacts of climate change on the poor and vulnerable of the world and even of our own country. There's also just a basic concern that we're called to be good stewards of God's creation, and people of faith take that seriously. So there are these justice dimensions of concern for the poor and the vulnerable. There's just basic stewardship dimensions, and there's concerns that climate change, even the effects that we're seeing now, these are impacts that are harmful to whether it's harmful to vulnerable populations or to the planet or to other creatures, and harm is something that we all take seriously too.
Let me ask this question. Several critics of the climate change movement have brought forth that, for example, every day around the world we have 19,000 children die from a variety of preventable problems, starvation, malaria. If you survey Nobel Prize winners, they'll tell you the #1 problem on this planet with a bullet is malaria. Okay, if you had to pick one thing we should work on, it would be malaria. The issue of climate change is one that doesn't always meet that same criteria. Why do you believe that it should, in effect, outpace malaria concerns?
Well, I'd start out by saying, one, I don't think as humans, I don't think we pick one thing and we're only concerned about one. We have an amazing ability to deal with complex issues. I'm a parent of 2 young boys, and we're juggling a million things at once all the time. And to be a good parent, I think there are a wide range of things we have to be able to react to and respond to. So I think it's only natural that we try to look at a wide range of things that are concerns for our communities, for our world, for our own families, and for ourselves. So but by no means do I think malaria is unimportant just because I think climate change is important. There are multiple important issues to work on. Interestingly, though, climate change links with malaria in a pretty important way because, of course, the vector of malaria is mosquitoes. Mosquitoes are going to thrive. That's one of the main concerns we have with a climate changing with a warmer planet, is that mosquitoes that carry all sorts of diseases, not just malaria, but West Nile virus here in our own
dengue fever.
Yep. That we're creating an environment that's
I think dengue fever is like #5 on the list.
It could be, right. So we do have those concerns that climate change is not irrelevant to some of those very important health concerns that do immediately cause deaths. Another example, hunters, sportsmen, say in Ohio and other places, moose populations being decimated in the northern United States. Why? Because they're being attacked by ticks, because the weather is just that much warmer enough that the ticks are having a heyday, and so they're sort of decimating some of those populations. So there's those kinds of impacts. People have also mentioned potential issues with fleas, ticks, and other insects that, we're creating a climate that's wonderful for them, and that does have impacts on us and on other creatures.
I do know that on the farm, I now have 12, and I've been I've now semi-retired from the farm, and my source for this is the farm magazines, and trust me, the farm magazines no one would ever accuse them of being bastions of the environmental thought.
Right.
Okay, but they've been very clear that in the classic Midwest Corn Belt, we now have 12 more growing days. 4 more in the spring and 8 more in the fall. That's historical. And the week that we're filming this is also the week of the Ohio Farm Science Review. And the thing that I've noticed with time is that the harvesting of the crops necessary for the Farm Science Review keeps getting a little bit later and a little bit later, and they're having trouble getting their machines out there to harvest it. So there's something going on, okay? But for example, this same week it came out that there's been a report released that global warming has slowed down. Okay, it's not it's not going on at the same, the infamous hockey stick, situation is not going to be a hockey stick, that is slowed down. So what's your response to all of that new research out there? Should we still, so in other words, should it still be a hot button topic, do you think?
Yeah, well, absolutely, actually. Yeah, so the hockey stick everybody's familiar with, where CO2 and temperatures are moving sort of like this. If you take the trend where it seems to be leveling out, you start with about 10 years ago and you only take the last 10 years of data. which is not enough to make a trend. I think by definition, climate scientists use a 30-year period as their definition for climate trends. So a 10-year period isn't even enough to give you something to go on. So it is true, though. We reached all-time highs sort of around 1998, 2000, and so most of the warmest years on record are all in the last decade. So we're up in a range where it's warmer than we've ever known what to do with. But if you look at just the last 10 years, there's sort of a leveling in the trend. That leveling is not too different from blips in the trend that you see kind of all along the way. So at any given time, there's noise and trouble, and that could be due to regional effects, that could be due to other pollutants in the air that might reflect things back. So it's actually too early to tell exactly what that 10-year blip means, but what is coming out in March is our next national climate assessment, which is the effort that our national government puts together to summarize all of the latest climate science and the state of what we really know about the climate. And that will be coming out in May. And one of the things that we're hearing ahead of time on that is that now scientists are at the 95% certainty level that the warming that we're seeing is human caused.
Okay.
And so if anything, there's actually an increase in our certainty that we really need to do something about this, because we are certainly responsible, almost certainly 95% certain, that trend of what's causing the warming that we're seeing and a lot of other things as well. It isn't just warmer temperatures that we're worried about. That's something that we are doing ourselves through our contribution and burning of fossil fuels into the atmosphere. And so since we're not doing much to remove those very drivers that are causing weather weirding, if you will, and other insecurities in our climate systems, we have no good reason to believe that it's just going to get better. It's going to continue to get worse. So the alarm that climate scientists have sounded and the various risk factors that they're concerned with, that doesn't change at all with that 10-year trend where it's sort of dipping around at the highest levels ever. We're still seeing that trend going up. So it's anybody's guess. You know, from the farm, predicting the weather is, we constantly talk about that. But if we look at the information that we have, we need to continue to be concerned, as the vast majority of the scientists are.
Well, this is Gene Krebs on behalf of the Centers for Community Solutions. We've been having a conversation with Sara Ward, Director of Interfaith Power and Light, and Dr. Greg Hitzhusen, who is with OSU and is the board chair of her organization.